Welcome to Curveball. Today I am with Sadia Hameed, and she is an executive optimization coach, an energetic healer, a spiritual guide. No wonder you have this amazing glow and energy around you, and a transformational mentor on a mission to guide women who are here to change the world by reconnecting them back to their core power and harnessing their full life force. I'm like, oh my gosh. And I have questions I sort of set up and prep for the interview, but Sadia told me today, she's like, I want to change my curveball. So what do you want to talk about? This is completely new to me. I know. I love this. How perfect. A curveball in curveball, like
a curveball
live and in action.
I want to talk about the plan I had when I stepped out of my career that I thought was perfectly thought out and why it landed with a thud, because I think it resonates so much with what you talk about around perfectionism and burnout and hustling. And I'm really feeling it. Now I'm on the other side of it. I would love to talk about it.
Let's talk about it. So tell me about where were you and what were you leaving? Like a big corporate job, a big salary, like a lot of power, a lot of context, a lot of burnout.
So I had spent 25 years in the nonprofit and philanthropic sector.
Oh,
I had
bless your heart. Oh my God.
Facing my trauma in other people's trauma, classically, hoping that if I heal the world, somehow that would heal parts of me. And it was a beautiful career. I got to travel the world. I supported a lot of really important causes, and I really ran the gamut. I got to be the worker bee. I got to be the manager, managing global teams. I got to work on the funding side, moving millions of dollars to great causes. And then I got to create my own organization. And when I walked out, I was at the helm of an organization I had set up and run for 5 years. We were
my gosh.
Extraordinarily successful during the pandemic. Yes.
Okay. So wait, well, because you created it. It's not just like you left it like, oh, I had this corporate job, my boss. I was like, I'm finally ready. When you create, I think that this is really significant. When you create something, run it for 5 years, and it's wildly successful. Well, first of all, what was the cause?
So the organization was called Thought Partnerships. And what it did was it brought together movement leaders from around the world who were working on similar challenges, but in very different contexts. And what we found was that the issues they were trying to overcome were spreading really quickly, and they had a lot of commonalities, but the solutions that were being applied to the problems were actually really fragmented and siloed. No one was talking to each other. And so every single movement was reinventing the wheel. And every time they thought that they caught up to it, it changed again. And that lack of perspective from people who are on different sides of it in different places at different moments in its arc was really invaluable. And so it was work that I had carried with me for at least 5 or 6 years before bringing it into its own organization. It had traveled with me from position to position. And then I was like, this deserves its own home. And
that's so ambitious. Like, I really just love that. But then to walk away from something that you built and is successful, I'm sure that there are people listening like, are you nuts? Like, what?
Sometimes maybe.
Yeah, but like, what was going on that you're like, this is just not my thing. And I just am like fascinated by that.
So I am a trained political scientist. So strategy was my thing. I would get super in the weeds. I was really good at predictive strategy. I could understand what was going to happen in the patterns of society. And so it really it checked all of my super nerdy boxes. And then I got to meet and work with amazing talent from all over the world and build my own team. We were completely virtual and online because we wanted to create equity of engagement. We wanted people to be able to join no matter where they were. And so when the pandemic hit, it was really interesting because we worked with a lot of people who were in the community, on the ground, on the front lines. And when the pandemic hit, they didn't really know what to do or how to pivot. And so they found themselves having to just, grind everything to a halt. Whereas we saw this huge peak takeoff because we were already virtual. We already had convening spaces. We had created some of the best known tables around. And so everyone was now in our spaces. And what was interesting is that in those years that we were navigating that, our conversation shifted from just the strategy of how to solve problems out there to what was going on in here. Because the walls between your personal and your professional life started to thin. We all had our kids, right, running around in the background.
Right.
And all of a sudden came the emotional side, the overwhelm, the side of business that we don't really talk about because it's seen to be soft skills. And in those moments, I realized how many of these exceptional people that I was working with and guiding were so burnt out. And they were really running on empty. And they were also just exposed to constant trauma, constant instability. It comes with the job description, but there was actually no internal support mechanism in order for them to be able to really metabolize that and to stay healthy and well,
right,
in a really holistic way.
You look back at that and you just see it as being so obvious. Like, I work with a lot of leadership consultants, and I had a long corporate career, and I'm always surprised at how little development leaders get. It's like you get so much, like when you're younger and you're at the beginning of your career, and then you move up, and then it's like, we trust you to figure it out. Yeah. And it's like,
and then you feel like you can't ask for help. So you're on this isolated island and you're hoping that someone might offer it without you needing to ask, so that you don't appear incompetent or unable or unqualified. And so that started happening. We had created such a safe and trusting space that a lot of these leaders were now coming, and they would say things like, you know what, out there, I am this huge job description, always in the media, always in the spotlight. But when I come in here, I get to just be me, and you see all of me, and I get to be all of me. And so we started to provide a lot more of what I just call the emotional organizational support. And there were a lot more conversations around that. And that continued for a good 18 months. We were doing both the strategy and then also these softer, more tender, vulnerable conversations. And then as the pandemic eased and everyone was able to start traveling again and go back out, there was so much fatigue from being online that edge that we had before the pandemic and during the pandemic then sort of started to become the place that people weren't as eager to be. And we stuck with it for a while, and then came to a point where we just went back to the movements we were supporting and said, what is it really? Because we've been here and created things and really changed the landscape of the field that we work in. So it wasn't competency, it wasn't value, it wasn't likability, it wasn't quality, it wasn't any of those things. It was just this desire now for them to get back out into the world, and for them to feel like they had been able to refill enough during their time with us that they felt more charged to go out. And so after a while, my team and I were sort of like, wow, did we perhaps fulfill the mission that we set out to do, which was to bring them and create the connections that they could independently sustain, that would lead to much more connectivity and elasticity across the field. And they kind of feel like the kids have left home now. So what do the parents do with themselves?
Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it. Like my company is mature to the point.
Right. Yeah. And to keep doing the same things without iterating or innovating didn't make any sense, because the programs were just not performing the way they used to. And I'm sure you know that funding is based on performance, whether we like it or not. And so we needed to show that things were shifting. One of the gifts, I think, of the pandemic, if we can call it that, was that once the emotional side of things and the burnout side of things had been elevated, you couldn't stuff it back in. It was there and available for much more public conversation. So my team and I decided to do a pilot for a year where we shifted from our strategy, from our hard strategy work, and we launched like an awareness, visibility, conversation campaign called Holistically Well, which was asking this question of, if you want a really successful, thriving organization that is able to sustain itself in any environment and circumstance, then actually this idea of emotional well-being across the organization becomes really important. But it's not being funded, it's not being prioritized. And we really wanted to change that. So we had a lot of really honest conversations, because one of the things we had done as the small and mighty organization was we had come up with a reputation of being a team that was able to perform really well in really hard circumstances without burning out. And everyone wanted to know, how did you do that?
Right.
And in fact, I can remember in the middle of the pandemic almost feeling ashamed, because I was sitting with philanthropic leaders in a meeting and everyone was crashing out. And I had so much empathy for them. But when my turn came, I was like, we're good. We're supporting each other. We're super healthy. Like, I've changed the model of how I'm investing in my team. And actually the outcomes are incredible. And then I felt like the black sheep, because I was like, oh, we're not burning out. And that is when, in those moments, I really thought to myself, and I was talking to my team, and my team was extraordinary. And also they really wanted to stay in the work. They wanted to stay in the theme of the work. And they also wanted the security that you get from having a position.
Right.
I found myself at the crossroads of thinking, I have this model of this culture and this organization I built from the ground up. I've helped to infuse it into so many other organizations through the work that I do here. What would it look like if I actually take that entire framework and then offer it back to the sector, but not as a not-for-profit?
What a good question. Yeah.
Right. But as a
very much
private
for-profit
entity. Right. And also just to be able to have ownership over the IP of what I had created, which you can't always exercise in certain legal makeups and organizations. And so I did that. And I happily, I had a long runway. I sunset the organization and the team. They stayed till the very last day, even though they had an entire year to find new jobs and transition. They didn't want to leave. And they worked with me on creating this framework and giving me all the experiences that made this so real and livable. And I wound everything down. And in the spring of 2024, I happily marched off into the sunset. And I, for that entire year, met with everyone across my network base. I had hundreds of organizations, executives, funders, foundations. And not a single person said to me, Sadia, that's a terrible idea. Nobody wants that outcome, like hard pass.
Right.
But it also wasn't selling. No one was actually purchasing the programs. No one was actually bringing me on board to bring the framework into their organization. And then I was like, this is really strange. Why wouldn't anyone want this outcome, especially given that there's a really user-friendly, self-guided way to do it? I'm not creating dependency on me. That's not going to serve anyone in the long run. Everyone told me I was nuts to do that. They were like, you have to create dependency. You'll go out of business. And I'm like, but that's not what I want. I want them to thrive.
You want them. I want my birds. I want my little birds to fly the coop. Like I really do. I feel like that's how I've been successful, is when they become self-sufficient.
Yeah. And then it's lasting. I don't want to watch it fall apart. Like, that's really heartbreaking. And so in November, as we hit the elections, and in my sector, those moments are like really big moments, really big trigger moments. And the outcome happened, and the field went in all its different directions, depending on which side it was on, right? And had a reaction. And in that moment in November, when I realized that I had barely made any money, I had put my heart and soul into something, I knew that it would work, but no one was actually willing to buy it. I sort of just collapsed in November 2024. Like full on burnout. And I realized a few things about why I hadn't been successful. The first was, I didn't actually give myself any kind of a break. So I didn't even acknowledge my own burnout. Like, I went full speed through the pandemic, post-pandemic, right? I just kept going.
Well, and you're supposed to be the person who has burnout figured out too.
Immune to burnout.
Yeah.
I burned out and recovered so many times, though. Not just once, many times. And that was sort of the badge of honor, right? That even if I did, I would be able to overcome it. This time, though, something felt really different. Something inside me realized that I was no longer hustling for a cause that was just outside of me. I was actually trying to take out into the world a really honest expression as a part of who I am and the
Right.
service that I wanted to provide. I also realized that I had been doing just that. I had been completely hustling, full blown masculine hustle. And something inside me was like, Sadia, no more. And I couldn't, Heather, even if I had wanted to push myself,
Right.
the only place I was going to push myself to was all the way over the edge. And I'm a solo mama of 2 kids. There's no plan B. There's only plan A, and it's me.
Right.
And
Right.
so
Yeah.
I had to stop and really just be like, whoa, what am I doing? And why am I doing this way? And why have I always done it this way? And who told me this was the right way to do it? And why did I believe them? And what if I don't want to do it this way anymore?
Well, no, I really appreciate you saying that, because I had like a significant situation in 2024. Like I blah, 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 blah. I had brain surgery. And during that time, like I really realized, because I was able to sort of choreograph my own comeback, right? Because I just shut down my business for a while, and I got to come back like with all this business experience, but like sort of with a clean slate. Like I didn't even have any clients. Like I had to really, so I was very excited about that. And one of the things that I realized once I started to understand what it was really like, nothing like a brain aneurysm to like help you figure out alignment, but it's that how many times I did things because I took advice from other people who I felt were more experienced or more successful than I was. And it wasn't even things I like. I'm a marketing person, so I would market in a certain way that I don't like to be marketed to that way. I don't like to market people to that way because it's super psychologically manipulative. But I'd be like, oh, but that's how you do it. And then I was just like, why do I think that there's only one way to skin a cat? You know what I mean? Like, it's just so interesting. So I'm like, why do I feel like I'm beholden? But I realized in like last year at this time, like, oh man, of course I made decisions in alignment, but I also made a lot of decisions and took a lot of action based on advice other people gave me.
Well, and I realized that I had been the most brilliant student of personal development. I had spent so much money on mentorships. I realized too that I had picked mentors who were more masculine, even if they were women. I had picked people who felt like they had more of that approach of the shark, right? Like I had gravitated towards that out of my nature to survive and thrive.
Right.
And so even though I had been such an amazing student, I was like, why isn't any of this working? Like what is happening right now? And I realized in that moment, well, it's not going to work for a few reasons. But the most important one was because it didn't feel safe in my body. See, what I had done all of my adulthood and my entire career was gradually disembody from myself more and more because I was advised on how to be less of me, how to be more agreeable, how to fit in more, how to maybe not share so many opinions. And so more and more and more, I had contorted myself into whatever version I believed I needed to be in order to be successful. And every time I did it, I severed myself from a part of myself. And so when I collapsed in a heap in November 2024, I was so tired. I didn't even know if I had a pulse. I just knew that I couldn't do it anymore. And when I thought of why I was so exhausted, I realized it was because I had been resisting myself. The person I'd been fighting this whole time was actually an expression of me that was just asking to be answered.
God, you are just giving me goosebumps. Like, I'm just like, oh my God, this is so profound.
And I surrendered. I was like, all right, you know what? Here I was with my big old mind and feeling like I did everything. I ticked all the boxes, star students, all my mentors loved me, all of that. And I felt awful. Like I just like I was at war with my body. My energy was so dim. I wasn't enjoying work anymore. Something that I loved so much felt like it had crashed and burned.
Right.
But when I surrendered and I started listening, I remembered things that I had studied, but that I had not embodied for myself.
Sure.
I remembered that as a woman, you are seasonal and you have cycles. I remembered that actually there's a deep knowledge and wisdom that is not emotional. It's an actual intuitive instinct that women have that a lot of men can dismiss because it's not quite the same for them.
Right.
I realized that a lot of what I could have been guided by were the very dials I had turned down or turned off
Of course.
because
Right.
someone else told me that they weren't reliable enough.
Right. Well, that makes so much sense too, because I know when I was like working my way up and you're trying to advocate an idea or advocate for yourself. And I just, I look to see like, who are my role models? Well, it was primarily men. Like the workplace was still, I worked in a really male dominated industry. And we don't get, and girls do not get taught the same way boys do to stand up and express a contrarian opinion. Like, so so then you're sort of going, you're emulating men. Like I work with real estate developers, right? Like that was, and there would be women who literally would, oh my gosh, I think sometimes like the women had bigger penises than the men did. Cause I was just like, wow, they sort of had this chip on their shoulder a little bit. And that's where they learned. So that's what they would emulate. So I don't think, cause we weren't taught, society doesn't teach us in the same way. And as enlightened as I would like to say I am, like
And it's
I
not
think
anyone's fault,
no,
right?
I
There's
think
no
like
judgment
society
of it at
raised my
all.
kids a lot. If I look back, it's like, I remember when my son learned, like when he was a freshman in high school, like one of our dogs died and he's like, I need a minute. And I knew he was starting to cry and he was confused because he knew now boys don't cry. I didn't teach him that, but he knew that.
Right.
So I love that you're talking about this because I think this is so relatable for so many people.
Well, and in those few months, right? So at this point, I was 43 going on to 44. I had taken this long to burn out over and over again and finally come to the place where I was willing to stop and listen. And when I did, the transformation happened so fast within a few months. And at this point, I felt like everything was burning down around me. My relationships, I felt like I was in a struggle with my kids, my body, my business wasn't doing very well. So
Right.
at this point, it felt like another rock bottom. And not because I wasn't making it through every day. Quite frankly, I'm not sure if anyone on the outside would ever even have been able to tell, because that was also one of my superpowers.
Oh, sure.
Like no one knew that everything was on fire. No one was ever going to know, but I knew and I felt it. And this time when I surrendered, like really, really listened, and it was winter. And in winter, it was like, just stop. Consolidate yourself again, like consolidate your reserves, go into a deeper reflection and just ask yourself, what is it that you feel like is not allowing you to have everything that you want? Like you have it on paper, but you don't like the way it feels.
Wait, say
And
that
you don't wanna
again.
live
I
like
really
this again.
I want to ask myself that same question. What was it? I want to write this down.
In the winter. So
Yes.
go into a really deep reflection as you consolidate your reserves and ask yourself, what is it about how you're living right now that really doesn't feel the way you most want it to? So I love using the analogy of nature, because in winter, a tree doesn't die. It just consolidates. It reserves its energy. It drops all of the excess and it stays in stillness. It's not going to try to bear fruit in the winter because it knows that the fruit won't survive, and it knows the season of bearing fruit is coming very soon. So in that moment, though, it is still growing stronger, deeper, wiser. All of the seeds that are planted are still there and germinating. They're just going through the season as it is. And the same is true, especially for women. We are seasonal in our hormones, in our cycles, and we are seasonal based on the environments we're in. And so that plays a lot, coming back into that harmony, coming back into the idea that yes, January 1st is the new year on the Gregorian calendar, but like if you live in a place that's cold like I do, everything outside is actually in stillness.
Right. Yes.
And more in silence and in darkness. It's not springing to life. It's not going out and working out at the gym, right? 5 times a day and things like that. And this is why for so many women, you can start off in that hustle mode and then very rapidly thereafter, you feel you can't sustain it. And then we just get upset at ourselves.
Right.
We get angry, we push harder, we try harder because no one ever helped us understand what it means to follow the flow. No one helped us understand that you can still be so powerful and potent, even in more stillness and more reflection and more silence.
Yes, that is the truth. I can attest to that 100%. It's like in the stillness, the answers come. But I also know that in the stillness, the voice inside your head that I hear most often for me and other entrepreneurs is, oh my God, you're behind on stuff. Like you should be further along. And I'm like, there's some sort of like mileage program. It's not like I'm getting into a car and like driving 25 miles someplace. Like it's just so interesting. But I know I just completely understand that.
But I can tell you what that is in your mind.
What is that?
The voice in your mind is a programming that was created when you were really little. That is your survival programming. So your nervous system is like the electric communication system between your body, your environment, your mind, your actions. And so when you're little, we're one of those species where when we're born, we can't actually survive on our own. We actually are reliant on other people. So we develop behaviors in order to stay alive and to thrive. And when we come of age and those patterns get instilled in, usually before the age of 7, they get cemented in. And our mind is remembering every time our body did something and was safe as a result of it. And usually those are very specific behaviors. And that just gets coded in as our survival program. Our nervous system has one job: to make sure that we stay alive.
Right.
That is what it's here for. When we come of age, no one comes and taps us on the shoulder and says, hey, guess what? Congratulations. Now you're 18. And all of those survival programs you have, they might have served you well in your youth, but now you're coming into a stage of life where you can actually grow more, expand more, take more risk, be in different situations, allow yourself to have experiences that you've never had before, and for you to be safe doing it. And so we just keep going all the way through adulthood, running the same program from our youth.
And even things that aren't good for us, like aren't healthy for us, can be safe for us.
Yes, because we didn't die from them.
What?
So let me give an example. Let's just say hypothetically that someone was broke, even though they're super smart, right? Have the aptitude, all of that is there. But for some reason, they can't break poise. Like everyone who says, Sadia, I've hit that glass ceiling. I'm like, that glass ceiling is your nervous system. My love, that glass ceiling is not your competence, your intellect, your aptitude, your value, your worth, nothing, your resume, nothing. That is just your nervous system, because our mind can only replay the things that we have already lived. So if you grew up and worked and earned, and that was the environment you grew up in, then every time you worked and earned, and why people have these incremental increases in their income is because your body needs to feel safe. Every time you're doing it, it's new. It's like, we might die. There's an extra 10K. There's an extra 100K. How do we know if that's safe? If you were in cycles of being broke or just running out of money or living paycheck to paycheck, it's not enjoyable, but your system knows you didn't die from it. Now, if you get into a situation where it becomes more risky and the danger of it actually goes higher,
like
then
you might lose your house or something like that.
Exactly. Then your nervous system will actually start to push you into a gear that says, whoa, not that close to the edge, right? Like, let's come back a little bit. Let's stay here in what we then call our comfort zone.
But it will let you go right up to the edge and almost like that is so interesting to me. And it can do it without being like, you can do it like without even feeling anxiety or anxious, or it's just like, you're just sort of there because
The interesting thing about anxiety is a protection mechanism that recognizes that we might be about to feel an emotion that was unpleasant for us previously and it doesn't want us
Mm,
to. And so the anxiety literally scrambles your nervous system. Like anyone who's had a panic or an anxiety attack knows that you can't actually, in that moment, you're just trying to physiologically calm yourself.
right.
So it really does. It paralyzes you. But when you learn how to be more in sync with your nervous system and
Yes.
actually understand it and bring it into alignment, then the minute you feel the anxiety coming, you can talk to it. It might sound nuts, but I talk to my anxiety and I go, hey, I feel you. I know you're trying to protect me for something, but look around. Listen, I'm okay. I'm
Right.
safe. I got this. I'm an adult now. You can allow me to experience whatever it is underneath this because it might not serve me anymore. And I am ready to grow and
Right.
I am ready to be safe doing it. And so the way in which we move out of these loops, so we break these loops, is we have to do it consciously. And we do it in small increments every
Hmm.
single day, doing something that allows our body to realize that it's safe to do. By if we're talking about spending money or living in wealth and abundance, it's not just how much money you have in the bank, it's what you give yourself permission to experience and live in life.
Right.
So for some people, it might be like, I'm not allowed to have that beautiful thing. I'm not allowed to have that experience. I'm not worthy of that fresh food from that grocery store. Only
Right.
wealthy people shop there. The more that you allow yourself to have these small experiences where you go and you do it, and then you realize you didn't die and you
Right.
didn't lose your house because of it. So you do it responsibly, right? We're not talking about recklessness, but
Yes, of
so you
course.
do it. And then your system starts going, oh, well, that's interesting. And that's a lot more enjoyable. I'm going to let you do a little bit more of that. And
That
so
is
you
that
start
well, that
moving
makes so much
in that
sense because
direction.
I know like when you're getting ready, like you feel like I work with a lot of executives turned entrepreneurs and they leave this high context, high paying, high, I know where fit in to literally having that all just completely stripped away and they're just trying to figure it out. And it's like, sometimes there's like this huge identity crisis. And I always say like, I know it feels like you're on the top of a high rise and you need to like jump over like Matrix to another high rise over an alley that has like broken glass and needles and like dirty diapers and like you don't want to fall there. But then when you finally take action, this has been so many times I thought things were like insurmountable. And then you actually take action. It's like stepping over a crack in the sidewalk. Like it wasn't is
Mhm.
and that's oh my gosh, that is just so interesting. I'm learning more about the nervous system and if I could tell you how many thousands of dollars I spent on productivity experts and I did the same thing like and it was like when I finally decided to stop working against me and my
Mhm.
brain and my mind that things really started to click for me and I'm like that's so
Well,
interesting.
and you start to feel better. Like for me, I realized that it wasn't even about making my business successful. It was
Right.
about realizing that I didn't want to have to keep feeling like I was right at the edge all the time. And that's not
Right.
just a financial experience, that's like a whole body experience. And the more that you start to understand and regulate your nervous system and really, really understand how you can guide it to start to relax and calm down as
Mhm.
you get back into the flow, into the seasons, into the softer cycles where you listen to your body. She's asking for rest. She's asking for movement. She's
Right.
asking for food. She's asking for silence. She's asking for fun. And your nervous system starts to calm down. This is when you connect back into your intuition. This is
Right.
that I like to call your inner genius. This is where the communication from your inner genius becomes so precise that you will never not know what to do again. And it doesn't matter what part of your life you're talking about.
Right.
Because much like the analogy of the tree and the seeds, I actually firmly believe that we all came here for a reason. We're here for a reason, we're here for a
Right.
purpose. every single one of us is unique in some way, which means the idea of needing to compete or compare is ridiculous, because there's one Heather Campbell, there's one Sadia Hameed. And that means that actually the most exciting thing we can do is encourage each other to unlock the best of ourselves, because then the
Right.
world is just going to be better, 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 better. And all of those codes of how we do that already exist inside us. Like an apple tree
Right.
seed doesn't wonder if it should be a pumpkin patch, right?
Right.
It grows into a
Exactly.
beautiful apple tree, and it knows how to use the environment it's in to pull in all the
Yes.
resources it needs to become that tree. I believe we can too, but women need to do it by actually following their flow. And
Right.
once you do, that clarity, that focus, that calmness that everyone is searching for, it clicks in and you find it. And the
Right.
more you find it, the more you want it. And so it becomes this really positive addiction. And it's the
Right.
best dopamine you can find, is just this absolute sense of, oh my gosh, I'm here. I'm good. I got this.
Yeah.
I don't know how, but I know I will. And I'm going to follow the guidance that comes to me, and I'm going to keep moving forward, and I'm going to see how great it really gets to be. And to me, especially in midlife, this is the game we're really here to play as women.
Oh my gosh. I am just feeling so inspired. I'm really having an appreciation for my nervous system and also my ability to just become aware of it. Like, I've been so much in my head because I had a brain issue, figuratively, literally, understandably. But then it's like I just realized I just was completely ignoring my little heart. And so what was interesting is my therapist said, "Why don't you ask your heart if it has a name?" And I said, "Okay, I
Mm-hmm.
will." And it did. It does. Her name is Hope. And I'm like, "Are you just making that up because I'm in marketing and that's such a good name for a heart?" And she's like, "No,
I
that's
love
legit."
that.
And so then I thought, "Oh, that's interesting. I wonder if my anxiety has a name." And it does. She does,
Mm-hmm.
Julie, which I think is hilarious.
Mm.
And
I
then
love
I asked my
that.
brain, like, of course, then because I was so into my heart, I was ignoring my brain. I asked my brain, "Do you have a name?" It took a while for my brain to answer, but my brain said, "Yes, my name is Brian." So anytime I have a thought, I have to think
Oh, I
about
love
Brian,
that.
the dog from Family Guy. And I'm just like, oh my God, that is so funny. But
But
I
it
can
makes
appreciate it
sense that
because
your
then I can
brain
have a
is the inner
conversation
masculine.
with Hope, and I can have a
Mm-hmm.
conversation with Julie. And I can see it just gives me this tiny smidge of separation where I now can like be more of an observer, which I always think is the ideal place to be. Okay, I have so many questions I want to ask you. The first is,
Can I
oh yeah,
can I
sorry.
just say one thing?
Yes.
Can you see, if you ever feel inclined to, what it would be like if you allow them to talk to each other? If you say, "Hey Hope, do you
Mm.
have a message for Julie today? Hey Julie, is there something you need Hope's help with? Hey Brian, I know you're hearing this. Do you have one day, if you feel
Yes.
tickled to, just
I
try
love
it and
that.
see
Yeah.
it. This is where your inner synergy and alchemy happens. And then you start to realize you don't have to separate any of them from one another. They can
Mm.
learn to step in and step out. And
Right.
you get to be the sovereign command center of how that happens in the most beautiful and supportive way for you.
Oh
And you
my
will feel
gosh.
great and clear and
Right.
certain every single day.
Right. Because you definitely seem like you have your shit together. And yeah. And I know
That's
part of
the
it,
way in
like,
a
but
thing. Yeah.
genuinely, I don't mean like a coping skill, like
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
that Sadia is performing for us right now. But I really feel that. Like there are just some women who you just know they're smart. They're going to be really smart and interesting to work with. And you're going to learn a lot. Like you're going to have fun because you're going to like dig into stuff like you just remind me of like I worked at a company where we would work with consultants and I loved our consultants. Like they were so cool. And you're like that kind of person, like super
Thank
smart, super
you.
creative. You can just tell. So you said you had a big transformation, like after you decided to do this. So I also have like, do our seasons as women, okay, this is like, but do our seasons as women correlate with the seasons of the year? Like winter is a time for reflection, spring is a time for renewal, summer is a time to get tan, and then fall is a time to like what
To harvest and also to release. Yes. And also, so we have seasons of life. And so I love working with women in their midlife because the media has told us that this is going to be a really crappy stage of life where our
Right.
bodies are
Yes.
going to fade. We're not reproductively useful. We're just going to be tired. Our husbands will hate us, right? On and on and on and on. Actually, it's the total opposite. So seasonally, midlife for anyone, but especially for women, is actually your peak. It's your time of harvest in life.
Right. Oh,
So
amazing.
your younger years are your spring. Then you have your summer as you're going through adulthood and finding yourself. And then you have your harvest, your autumn, which is where we are in midlife and what they like to call perimenopause and menopause. And then in winter, you are in your older years. You are starting to actually leave behind the legacy and consolidate, but you are starting to age out in a way. Where we don't, none of us escape that. Like this crazy thing we decided to do called life means at some point it actually ends.
Right. It's the only thing that's like it's the great equalizer. We're all born and we all die.
And then seasonally, yes, I would say that we have that. Where are you in just the arc of life? Then there is a question of where are you and what is your environment like? Because actually women are intended to be very, very in tune with the elements and with nature. And it's part of what allows us to anchor our root chakra and be fully grounded and embodied is when we actually do look around us and see how the seasons are calling on us to follow the flow of our energy. So some people who live in really tropical climates might have a very different experience. For people who go through 4 seasons, it's different. Honestly, I would love to work with women who live in Nordic countries where it's dark 6 months of the year and light 6 months of the year, because they probably have a completely different rhythm and understanding of what makes them successful. And so our outer environment is really important. And then every month we have our own seasons because our cycles are also happening in 4 phases.
Right.
And when you learn what the energy flow is with your hormonal rhythm, I remember my earliest introduction to this was when her name was Zara Haji, and I was trying to conceive my daughter and I was having a hard time. And she said, well, it's because you've been really mean to your body for a long time and she doesn't really feel revered. And so she doesn't want to have a baby with you. And I was like, okay, so help me fix that. And this was over a decade ago. And she taught me how to track my cycle with the moon, but she helped me understand your energy flows and your hormone levels through it.
Right.
And then I actually, way before we had these apps that we have now, I have spent the last decade planning my entire work schedule, even when I ran my own organization, around my actual cycles. When am I at peak energy? My spring, your maiden, right after your cycle. What's happening to you in ovulation? What's happening to you in your luteal phase? What's happening to you when you're shedding? And how are you actually learning that to know when you're going to optimize? When do you go close that big deal? Like, when am I going to go ask for that $5 million?
Right.
When am I going to say this is a reflection time? And I started doing this and I started introducing it to my team and we created so this was part of the program that I wanted to take out into the world.
Right.
But
oh my gosh, I thought I was such a smarty pants for having an IUD for so long. So I haven't had a period. And then I just went right into menopause. So it was like, so now I feel like, oh, I probably missed out on a lot. Like if you prevent yourself from cycling.
Yes. And there's no judgment there. I think that's really down to personal choice. I also know many women who early in life had health scares. They had to have hysterectomies. And they ask me that. They're like, well, how do I know? And I'm like, well, love, the moon is still doing its little cycle in the sky.
God, isn't that just how everything's connected?
Yeah.
I often wonder, like when I hear about like different societies that really, really, really try to keep women down, I'm like, what are they so afraid of? They're afraid of this. Exactly.
Well, and the interesting thing here is that I think, yes, there's a lot of fear and so much of this wisdom has been erased. Like if you go back into traditional cultures and traditional medicine, like, or now what we would call alternative or holistic medicine, they would call their traditional cultural medicine. So much of this is there. What women would observe during pregnancy, what it meant when they were actually breastfeeding, what it was to heal your body, what it was as you went through perimenopause or menopause. So much wisdom there. And I think the fear is just this idea of there's this threshold you cross. I don't know if you feel like you crossed it when you were in your, for me, it was when I turned 40. This, I'm not so sure I care as much about what you think anymore threshold.
Right. Like someone was asking me, because I just turned 60 last year. Wow. And Jen Gottlieb actually was like, she's about to turn 40. I'm like, oh, you little peanut. Did. I'm sure I was like 21. I could legally buy booze when she was born. But she was like, people say like, you just stop giving a shit when you age. And I'm like, no, it's not that you stop giving a shit, because obviously I still care what I look like. And of course I care what people think, and I want to leave a good impression, those kinds of things. I said, what the difference is you just understand how much drama you had in your life, and you just have no tolerance for that drama. Right. You're like, I'm out of that game.
And so actually it's this midlife is this really beautiful time because you have enough life experience.
Right.
And you've come to a certain level in life, whatever that might be, and you've earned your way there. Like most women feel like they really went in there and they did it. They did everything they wanted to do. And then they're like, first off, is this all there is to life? Even if it's a beautiful life. And second off, why don't I feel great? Because now if you're going to tell me I struggled, I got here, and now I'm going to feel terrible the rest of my life for the next 20 years. And so there comes the edge, the irritation, right? People sense shifts, and then they get worried because they somehow imagine that a sovereign feminine is just this wild, crazy person who's going to come and burn everything down.
Right.
And it makes me chuckle a little bit because there might be some who are like that. But for the most part, what the sovereign feminine actually is in midlife, when you're starting to go through this, is something I call this period the ascension of light. Like energetically in your body, something really interesting and profound is happening. And actually it's something that if women are able to really move into this state of being, it will bring back so much joy to families and unions and partnerships and just society in general, because it actually will restore women to a sort of state of being that frankly, historically and culturally was always there. And so what's happening in this period of time that is medically called perimenopause is, and the reason why you get a little bit more edgy, or maybe you have better boundaries, or you don't want as much drama, is to me what's happening energetically. So your root, where your root, once you move into the seasonal way of being, your root really gives you this grounded safety and security. You start to understand yourself. You feel what alignment and calm and centered feels like. And you start to flow with it, and you don't question it as much. And so you give yourself the sense of anchored security that we were often taught to look for elsewhere, but that we can find in ourselves. At the same time, you have enough life experience and you have enough knowledge and awareness where for many at this age, you're also just understanding that you're connected to something bigger, right? Like we start to realize we're not really just this small, there's something bigger. And so your crown is like connected to this. You just have this bird's eye view. You have a different view of the world as you're coming into this age. I don't know why, but you just do. And most women I talk to say, yeah, that's right. I feel that.
Yes.
So you're being held, right, in a perfect aligned way between your root and your crown. Yes. You have all this wisdom in your womb because you're still going through your cycles for those women who have them. And your womb is where your intuition is. That is your inner genius. Your compass lives there. And at the same time, your womb is trying to, while it is still going through, right? You're not yet in menopause. So you're still having cycles at some point, whether they're frequent or infrequent. Your womb still has all of its wisdom, and it's trying to move that up into your third eye, which is where all your visions come from. So when we
Right.
dream, when we have waking visions, when we have inspired ideas, when we look out and we have this entire scene of like, I could see that happening, like that visionary sight, all of that innovation comes out from your third eye.
Right.
When you have a communication between these energy centers in your body, and a lot of people experience things like hot flashes, your temperature is fluctuating, your hormones are fluctuating, you are actually moving energy up and down between these centers. And what lives in between are the three biggest ways that we change how we want to express ourselves. There's our solar plex, which is our personal power, our
Right.
image, our way of wanting to be in the world and who we want to be in the world. There's our heart that you already talked about, right? Hope, who's right there, who wants to love, but she also wants you to love her. She
Right.
doesn't want to self betray and self abandon anymore. She doesn't want to come last anymore. She doesn't want to forfeit everything that she desires for everybody else around her. She did it for a long time, and now she wants to be loved and pampered and spoiled and
Right.
appreciated too. Right. And then you have your throat, which is your expression.
Right.
So we start saying more things and sharing more things and doing more things. And whenever everyone says, oh, women are losing themselves, they're having this midlife crisis, I'm like, it's not a crisis. It's just a complete shift from
Right.
performing and trying to measure up to standards that we never even designed, that are not even part of the feminine flow, to
Right.
being at a moment where we're like, I just don't want to do that anymore. It's not that we don't want to be within you anymore or contribute anymore or
Right.
collaborate anymore. It's actually, we want to be able to come into our own. And there is this actual energetic point of expression. And a lot of women mentors that, and you'll hear this language everywhere now, they call it the queen, the time of the queen, right? The rising of the sovereign feminine into the queen. A queen is somebody that is a little bit older, right? More established, looking to consolidate, has a certain amount of wisdom, is looking to create a legacy, is looking to also create something for her community, for her family, for her partner, for herself, right? It's not just singular.
Right.
It comes with this whole, and the queen is also looking to start consolidating into a matriarch. You know, I look at my mother and I consider her, my father passed. My mother is the matriarch of our family. And I have so much reverence for her to know that actually there is that wisdom of generational wealth and legacy that gets to be followed through the maternal line as well. It's not just a masculine thing.
Right.
You actually consolidate that for generations and lineages by having both your masculine and your feminine able to do it together. I don't know very many families these days where you don't have two people working, where you don't have them working together to build a life. And that's what this really is all about. And then eventually when your cycles stop, your womb wisdom is all still there, but it's not firing all the time the same way that
It
it
probably
is.
is even wiser because it's not
Right.
having to shed. Like it's probably just like, I've done that for like, I don't even know. How long did I have? Oh, like 40 some years.
And so now your wisdom is completely consolidated, right? It's aligned, and everything you do can be from this idea of legacy, from this different wisdom.
And I love the way you held that tension. I work with a somatic body healer, and she's like, that's how I want you to imagine yourself like moving, that you're being pulled. And also like, and yoga's like that. You always have opposing forces, right? And but she's like, really walk like that. And it's so interesting because right now I'm just even trying to think about like, what does that line look through my body? And you completely move differently too. I could seriously talk to you forever. I mean it. I think you're so amazing. I think the work you're doing is so helpful and transformative, but it's also absolutely fascinating to me that we have all the answers all like here.
Well, and it starts to feel really good. And what I realized is that the more I came into the state of being, I did wonder, will things change with my kids? What might happen in my relationships? How might people feel about me? The thing though is that when I surrendered to this, I felt like everything was already going down the drain anyway. So I wasn't sure how much worse.
I have nothing to lose. Yeah.
And it's been profound though. My relationship with my children is so much closer, but there's so much more respect between us. Like I feel like I'm not chasing them for things anymore. Like I have a respect and I'm able to give it back to them as well. Like we have a reciprocity now that I didn't have before. My relationship came back around and it's much more beautiful than it was before. And so much of that fear we have that will keep us looping in the comfort zone is because we can't fully give ourselves permission to imagine when it gets to feel so much better.
Right.
But it does. And it happens so quickly. And honestly, this is a state of being that I want to give to anyone I come in touch with, because it's not just going to change it for them. It's going to improve everything for their relationships and their teams and their families.
Rising tide.
And it gets to be fun again.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, oh, like we're having fun again. And the world around us is unstable and uncertain. And we don't get to control that, but we get to determine our state of being. And I realized that suffering was a chosen state of being. And we can give ourselves permission to live differently. And when we do, I think that's the kind of contagious we want to be. The joy, the wishing each other.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. Everyone thinks I'm
excited
nuts.
for
I'm like,
you.
Perimenopause sounds great. Let's go.
Yeah. I'm just so grateful that there's so much conversation around this, because
me too.
I think about what my mom had, I don't know, where would she go? The library or something? Like no one talked about it. I remember watching her go through menopause and I'm just like, oh man. But you didn't talk about it. Like it was just so interesting. Okay. Sadia Hameed, if people are like, I need more Sadia in my life. I want to work with Sadia. How do they get in touch with you?
Easy. My website is my name now. It's sadiahameed.com. So super easy to find me. You can look me up by my name on Facebook and Instagram too. My Instagram handle is also about to turn into sadiahameed.co.
Nice. So I love that. As a branding person, I really like that. Especially,
thank you.
What did you name your framework? We have to do a second podcast interview so you can tell me your framework, but what is their framework called?
There's a few, but the philosophy itself and the state of being is sovereign feminine. This period of time is what I call the ascension of light, because I actually think that we are coming into ourselves in a really magnificent way.
Well, and isn't there like that huge transfer of wealth happening too, that women are going to have more money than men, like in like 2 years?
I'm all for it. Yeah, I didn't know that, but that sounds exciting.
It's like huge. It's like this big transfer of wealth. And I'm part of this like women's business group in Denver. And I was like, how did I not even know this? Well, it's very interesting. Like, I do think all these interesting things are happening. And I love how I just love how everything's all connected to the trees. Your analogy of the tree was just beautiful. I'm serious. I got to have you back on again. You got to be a regular guest of mine. You're so amazing.
It would be my absolute pleasure. And thank you so much for having me.
Oh my gosh.
Letting me switch my curveball.
Oh my gosh. I'm so glad you did. Oh my God. We should go back to the original one. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Of course. My pleasure. Thank you.